Hey, so I'm glad you're here. Over the last couple of episodes, the last two episodes actually, I've been talking about this idea of women losing familiar body signals. And first, I talked about it through the lens of having had a hysterectomy and losing our menstrual cycles a lot earlier when you have a hysterectomy, like in your late 30s, early 40s. Then I talked about it in the last episode last week. I talked about it through this experience that so many women have in midlife where they they stop feeling familiar to themselves somehow, which is super uncomfortable. And the more I've sat with this whole idea and this whole conversation, the more I keep coming back to this same question. Why were so many of us unprepared for this? Because when I look back at it now, it is freaking wild how little most of us actually understood anything about perimenopause at the time that we were entering it. At least women my age anyway. And I'm 57 if you're new here. Now the conversation, there's a lot more conversation. It's louder. It's, all over social media. Women talk about perimenopause and menopause a lot more openly. Hell, I think a lot of times it's become kind of like the fad thing to talk about. There is more information everywhere, although a lot of misinformation and still not enough accurate information, but that's a topic for another day. Many more episodes could come on that, right? But even if there is more conversation now and it's a little louder now, back then, most of us understood menopause in the most surface level way imaginable, if we understood it at all. I mean, it was like, okay, so menopause is hot flashes. It's when your periods stop. It's when you don't want sex anymore. Um, People joked about mood swings, right? I can actually remember thinking, come on, monkey. My monkey's trying to get in the chair with me as I record this. I can actually remember thinking that my mother was losing her mind. And when I look back now, I know that she was actually going through menopause. But when I was a teenager, I remember thinking, man, this bitch is crazy. So rude, right? But basically that was it. Like, hot flashes, period, stop, that was basically it. And I know for me personally, I had no understanding at all that there could be years and years of things that pretty much started shifting long before menopause actually arrived, right? I did not understand why things suddenly felt so much harder, why stress was so much harder on my body, why sleep was so much less restorative, why sleep mattered so much more. I had no understanding of why my body wouldn't respond to just like slashing calories and why exercise just didn't feel like it was doing anything for me anymore. I didn't even have a language to put any of that to words. I had no perimenopausal vocabulary to even have a conversation. And when I think back now, I realize how many women around me were probably moving through the exact same thing at the exact same time. I think about work groups, and now I look back on things that happened and things that were said and things that were done and meeting conversations, and I can look around the room and envision the women who had to be going through the same thing that I was going through at the same exact time, and that was impacting some of what I now remember going on, but I had no idea at the time this was all part of our experience in perimenopause. And so we were going through this thing, so many of us were at the same time, but we were doing it in silence. We were still working, fully doing all the things, right? We were functioning, we were taking care of everybody else. We were trying to hold everything together personally and professionally. And underneath all of that, a lot of women, myself included, were struggling in ways that nobody knew, that nobody had any context for at all, including themselves. We didn't have context for it. We didn't understand it. We didn't know. I know I normalized a lot of what was happening. A lot. I would tell myself, oh, okay, you're just stressed. You're tired. You're just tired. You just need to get a good night's sleep. You just need to rest some this weekend. But oh, you need to get back on track. You need to get back on your diet. And the thing is, everybody else was saying the same kinds of things too. So it all just felt normal. But normal and healthy are absolutely not always the same thing. And normalized suffering is still suffering. Normalized suffering is still suffering. That warrants repeating. And that's just something that I can see so much more clearly now. As women, we become incredibly skilled at pushing through things that are actually affecting us very, very deeply. And I think this is a generational thing too. A lot of us, we're Gen X, and I think a lot of us were raised to just keep going no matter what, keep functioning no matter what. You keep showing up. You keep taking care of the people you take care of. You keep the house running. You keep on working. You keep performing. No matter the pressure, no matter what's going on or how you're feeling about it, you do all of that, even while your body begins to feel more and more unfamiliar to you, even while your emotions are feeling very different, even while you have this inherent sense that something internally feels just off. And despite all of that, you just kind of quietly adapt and be quiet about it. And because of that, I think a lot of women my age, probably all of you listening to this, we interpreted midlife as this sort of, we interpreted midlife as this sort of personal failure instead of a transition, the transition that it actually is. And I think that distinction matters so very much because when you think about a transition, right? Transition suggests a change. Your body is changing. You need recalibration. You need a, a new understanding. You need a different relationship with yourself, right? That's a transition. That's how that feels. That's how that's framed. That's how we understand transition. But failure feels so freaking personal. Failure feels like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why can't I handle things anymore? Why does everything feel so damn hard? Why can't I get myself back under control? And I remember feeling in a way that I could not explain. I couldn't fully explain what felt wrong. And most of the time, it wasn't something that felt dramatic. It wasn't there wasn't something catastrophic feeling going on, right? It was just this like growing sense that things that used to feel manageable suddenly felt a lot harder to me. And my body felt different. My emotions felt different. My resilience to things felt different, like stress and deadlines and responsibility. Like my tolerance and resilience and perseverance through those things felt practically different, but it definitely felt emotionally different too. And I talked about last episode quite a bit about the psychological versus the physiological side of things, and there being two very different components to this change and this transition. And I think when I talk about here the emotional resilience and the harder feeling, a lot of that can be physical, but it also can be psychological, right? And because I didn't fully understand the larger context of this transition yet, I interpreted a lot of that through this lens of discipline. The way I had approached a lot of things, the analytical brain in me approached all of this through, or I interpreted it through, and then approached it because of my interpretation through the frame of discipline. I thought the answer was tightening things up, taking more control over what I was eating, putting in more effort to stay on track with my diet, correcting myself when I got off track or ate something quote unquote bad. And when I talk to women now, I realize there are so many women who did the same exact thing. And actually, so many of you are still doing that. So many of you still are searching for this context that I'm talking about. And it's not because we were shallow or you're shallow if you're still kind of stuck in that rut. It's not that. It's because we're human beings. And when, as humans, and I think especially as women, when human beings lose stability and predictability in life, we naturally try to regain that stability. That's human nature. That's just how we're wired. And for so many women, the body becoming unfamiliar feels so destabilizing physically and emotionally, not just physically. It is, it's like an emotional chaos because the body stopped communicating in ways that we recognize, and that feels unpredictable and it feels chaotic. It feels very uncomfortable to say the least. And that's what this entire series, 3 episodes now, has been about. The body stops communicating in ways that we recognize. And this is all about communication, I think. Women losing signals, familiar body signals, misunderstanding the unfamiliar signals, the new ones that crop up that were like, what's going on here? And then blaming ourselves for not knowing how to interpret what our bodies are trying to say. And that part really stays with me because so many women have spent years fighting themselves when what we actually needed was context to understand what's happening to us. We didn't need the shame and the panic and all the anxiety that drove us to look for yet another extreme fix. We needed context. We needed a different understanding of the body that we're living in. And I think sometimes, well, I think something that changes when women finally begin to understand that the body stops feeling like an enemy to us, an enemy that we have to constantly try to battle for control. And it starts becoming something that we can learn to work with in a different way. It that's a whole different relationship with our bodies, right? That's a relationship built on care and love, not a relationship built on war and adversary. When I look back at the original conversation that kind of started all this, and this has been brewing in my head for a few years now, to be quite frank with you, but when I look back at the original conversation that started this entire three episode series, I talked about losing control of the body's communication systems after a hysterectomy. That's where I started this discussion. And I realize the deeper issue was never about just the loss of our menstrual cycles because of a hysterectomy. Or if you went through it naturally, it wasn't just about the loss of your menstrual cycles over time. It was the loss of familiarity. It was the loss of understanding. It was the loss of those predictable signals. It was the loss of feeling connected to what the body was trying to communicate anymore. And I think a lot of women have spent years trying to regain that control. I know I have. When what we actually were searching for was a reconnection with the body. It was that I want to feel comfortable in my own skin again. And the reason we're uncomfortable is because we've lost that connection. And not just with our bodies, but with ourselves. And so maybe that's why so many women get to this transitional period and feel lost for a while. So many times women will tell me, I don't know what I want anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what makes me happy anymore. And so maybe that's why we feel lost, because the conversation was never really just about menopause. The conversation was about learning how to understand ourselves again inside a body that doesn't speak the same language that it used to. Yeah, that's what it's about. Learning a new language. Yeah, learning a new love language. That's what it's about. That's what we've been searching for. Yeah. I hope this hits home for you. I hope it was helpful. This will be the last episode in this series, and I've really enjoyed thinking through all of this and then bringing it to you and having this conversation with you. I hope it's been helpful and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you right back here next time.